Did y'all miss me? Hello you guys, long time no see. I am back here to do my best books of 2022. I know I didn't post much in 2022, but honestly my reading in general wasn't the best. I only read 42 books. I usually at least try to read 50. That's pretty easy for me to do. I did not accomplish that last year, and I really didn't get any new favorites. There are a couple books on this list that are going to be all-time favorites, but for the most part 2022 really sucked as a reading year, and I'm happy that I feel like I'm not the only one in that same boat. It seems like that was kind of the general consensus of the year, so at least I'm not alone, but we don't love that for each other. So hopefully 2023 is going to be a lot better, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to take a little dip in the past and talk about all of the best books that I read in 2022. At the number 10 spot is going to be Finley, Donovan is Killing It. This I feel like is a booktube darling at the moment, and for good reason in my opinion. This is about Finley Donovan, who is a thriller, suspense, romance author, and she is overheard by somebody on the train when she's on the phone with her editor talking about her next book, and they hire her to kill someone, and the whole book is kind of her going through the motions with that. I'm sure you guys are well enough aware of this book. I am certainly not the first person to be talking about this. I really liked this. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really campy. I just had a really good time with this book, and I read the sequel pretty much immediately after this. It wasn't as good as the first one in my opinion, but like still good. I really just want to see like a campy TV show based on this book. I feel like it would make a really fun TV series, like kind of like Dexter-ish, but like more humorous. I don't know. I think it could be fun. I, again, really enjoyed this. There's nothing much else to say about it besides that it was a very entertaining and good time. So if you haven't picked it up yet, you should do so. Number 9 on the list is going to be Urbana by Nina LaCour. This was my first Nina LaCour book, and I really loved this story. It is sapphic, and it is about these two women and their journey together, but also it's basically kind of just about their own individual trauma and them kind of getting in like this romance together. But this book is definitely not a romance. It just happens to have two women falling in love with each other. But it's more so, again, a story about trauma and their fucked up lives and what has come from their past and how they're dealing with it now. I really don't love melancholic books. It's definitely not a genre that I tend to gravitate towards, but if it's gay, I'm usually okay with it. And Sarah and Emily's struggles and their journeys individually, but also together, filled me with really bittersweet longing. That's kind of the only way I can describe it. It just left me very emotional in an all-encompassing way. Like, I feel like I went through all the spectrum of like emotions. Like, there are parts that made me laugh, there are parts that made me really sad, made me really hopeful, filled me with grief. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that Nina LaCour made me feel, and I really appreciated that. This kind of made me feel the way that The Beautifuls by Silvia Moreno Garcia made me feel, which is another book that I really loved. And so if you were a fan of that book, I feel like you should pick this one up. It's definitely not the same plot-wise or really character-wise, but the emotional turmoil that book put me through, Nina also put me through with this book. Number 8 is actually going to be the only book that I have physically, and that is Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. Obviously, I'm sure we all know that this is Rocky's book from Blonde with a Book, so I am definitely a little biased in reviewing this book because I have met Rocky. We are friends and mutuals and all of that, and so I knew that I was going to absolutely adore her book and her future works. But despite my obvious bias and love for Rocky, this is just a beautiful story. This is about Ophelia, and she's at her last year of high school, and she has always been like boy crazy, but she finds out that she might be crushing on a girl, and she might have those same feelings for a girl. And I mean this with my whole heart. I don't think I have read a better coming of age YA contemporary before. I wholeheartedly believe that this book encompasses so much about realizing that you're queer at a young age and coming to terms with that, and kind of having to switch your perception of yourself while you're still developing that identity of yourself. And just Rocky did just such a good job with this. It is so beautifully written. It's so funny. Ophelia and all of her friends, they all have so much depth to them. They don't feel like side characters at all. Like, they feel like fully fleshed out individuals. And I absolutely love Ophelia, but I loved that all of her friends didn't feel like a piece of her journey. They just felt like they were alongside it, if that makes sense. It's just a really hopeful story about being queer and realizing that you're queer and not accepting any particular label, just like trying to figure yourself out and not really figuring it out by the end, but that makes it even sweeter, because really, do we ever all know the answer to everything? I certainly don't. So Ophelia, she's my girl. She's my girl. I loved this book. My next two books, 8 and 7, are both by the same author in the same series, and that is Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. 2022 was the continuation of my romance era, and I really only wanted to read about lesbians, clearly. I personally like Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail a little bit more, but both of them are absolutely stunning. They're both about these two stepsisters, Delilah Green and Astrid Parker. Delilah Green falls in love with Astrid's childhood best friend when she comes back into town from living in New York and photographs Astrid's wedding. Stuff happens in that book, spoiler alert. Astrid does not get married to a man. I know, shocker. Because in the second book, Astrid gets this really hot carpenter girlfriend. So that's an upgrade if I've ever seen one. Astrid Parker is just a little bit better because it's a more unique story that I haven't necessarily read a whole lot from, or really anything. We're following Astrid as she presumably, honestly, I mean, it kind of, a little bit of resemblance to Ophelia after all, even though it's a lot more, adult and a lot more explicit. Astrid has led herself to believe that she's straight this whole time, but then Compet comes knocking in, and she's like, maybe I do like women. And honestly, I love that for her. That's the kind of character development I want to see personally. And I had a great time with this. Astrid Herring Blake does a really good job at showcasing the individual problems of our heroine and their love interests, and not just making it about them getting together, which is something I really appreciate in my romances. I want to see the two characters kind of figure their own shit out before getting together with another person, because that's kind of what happens in real life, or should. And again, I just really liked seeing this new lens into a queer romance that I haven't necessarily read before. But yeah, not much else to say. I just really liked these two sapphic books. I cannot wait for Iris's book, because she is a fun-loving, free-spirited redhead like myself. And I'm really excited to see her get a little girlfriend. I think it's going to be very nice for me. Very much going to be a self-insert kind of situation. Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're taking the glasses off because these lens flares are driving me crazy. I'm just gonna have to be blind for the rest of this. And you know what? Those are the sacrifices we influencers have to make. Okay. At the number 5 spot is my one of 2 fantasies on the list. I finally read Gideon the Knight by Tamsin Muir. And I tell y'all that I have been trying to read this book for years. Before it even came out, I've been trying to read this book. I have attempted, I have failed, but in 2022, I conquered this book. And let me tell you, it was worth all of the effort and failed attempts because this was delightful. We all know the pitch. This is about lesbian necromancers in space, but it's definitely a lot more than that. One of my favorite things about this book is that there are different houses of necromancers, and each one of them has like different aesthetics and like powers and like quirks to them, I guess. Very much Hunger Games inspired. I don't know what that trope would be called, but I love when there are different sects to like a certain thing and there are different responsibilities within that and different vibes and aesthetics and everything. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I thought it was fun, but obviously the best part of this book is Gideon. This woman is hilarious. I don't really laugh out loud very often when I'm reading books, but multiple times did this woman have me cackling. Like, she is the funniest character I think I've ever read from before. And it was so fun watching her and Harrow interact. I also think that this is one of the best like true enemies to lovers that I've ever read because, you know, the girlies love to label their books as enemies to lovers, but no, this is true enemies to lovers. And it is in the best way when they're like hate each other, and then there's the sexual tension and there's the constant banter and the chemistry. It's just, oh, this is beautiful. And the ending? Nobody told me that the ending of this book was so good. The ending of this book had me open-mouthed, just staring at my Kindle for a good 10 minutes because I could not believe that that had happened. So if you love a good ending, this is gonna get you. But all I can say is I'm very thankful for Tamsin Muir for giving me one of the very few good fantasy experiences in 2022, and I will forever be grateful for such a generous act. All right, number 4, we're going back to romance. Who's surprised? You shouldn't be. I'm not, because again, it was the only thing that gave me joy in 2022. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This book was insane. This is about our main character, and she is a very prestigious doctor, part of this very prestigious medical family. They're like all surgeons, they're very rich. Her car ends up breaking down in this really small town, and she ends up getting picked up or like saved by the mayor of the town. And they end up sparking up a little one-night stand together that ends up in a multiple nights stand. A very like friends with benefits situation, if you will. She doesn't think anything of it because she is a good 10 years older than him. Their lives are so different, but it turns out that, you know, opposites attract. And I do not cry in books. You guys know I've only cried 3 times, I think, in books. This book almost got me. It was so close. I was so enamored and so invested in these characters and their relationship together. Abby Jimenez is able to create such high stakes within this romance, and you know that they're gonna end up together, obviously, but you just have no idea how it's gonna work because their lives are so different. Their goals are so different. They're just everything. You think that they're doomed from the start, right? And it lasts that way until literally like the 80% mark. I was just on the edge of my seat because I wanted these 2 characters to work out so badly, and thankfully they did, and it wasn't in a way that felt cheap or felt that either one of them was giving up more so than they should have. That's always the risk with these kinds of romances. Like, you don't want one person to have to give up something for another person. It's not very satisfying, and it's also kind of sad when that happens. Incredible banter. Again, the highs and lows of this book were so drastic. I was laughing for most of the book, and then I almost cried for the other half of the book. It's so good. I have not enjoyed a hetero romance this much in a really long time, and I didn't think I could, honestly. Abby Jimenez proved me wrong. Maybe the straights can have something. Just a little bit. A crumb, if you will. A crumb in the shape of this book, okay? Take it. And you better enjoy it. Now that I've threatened the straights watching this video, let's move. And what a good transition that was, because my number 2 book of 2022 is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This is a thriller, if you would believe. I don't think I've ever had a thriller in my top 10 books of the year list, and certainly not top 2, top 5 position. But this was a delight. We all know how I feel about feminine rage, baby.
I have a thing about feminine rage.
And my goodness, does this scratch that itch. This is following 2 characters. We're following a professor at this university, and then we were following a student at the university. And you know, there just happens to be this very unfortunate circumstance of terrible men just getting away with shit. Or so they thought. I'm not gonna get much into this book. It's a thriller, so I feel like maybe that's a cop-out answer, but I don't want to spoil anything about it. The twist in this book, it got me so good. And do keep in mind, I again don't read thrillers. I think it's probably my least read genre. So it could have been very predictable. It could have been pretty lame. I don't know. It was new for me. I ate it up, and I want seconds, in fact. It was delicious. It was sapphic, as was most of the books that I read this year, as it should be. I just really loved it. Again, I love feminine rage, and I will read any book that is centered on that. It just fills me with so much joy that even the cutest and fluffiest romances will never accomplish. All right, my number 1 spot. I feel a little bad putting it on here and putting it on this list, but I can't lie. I can't lie. It's Happy Place by Emily Henry. Listen, I know. It doesn't even come out until spring of 2023, but it was the best book I read. It was the best book I read in 2022. I was lucky enough to get an arc of this book, and this, point blank, is Emily Henry's best work. It may not be your favorite Emily Henry romance, but technical level wise, she devoured this book. The range of emotions that I felt with this book. Well, okay, before I gush about it, let's give a little bit of a synopsis. I feel like I owe y'all that much. This is about Harriet and Wynne and their second chance romance, because they're already married, but they are currently split up at the start of the book. But they haven't told their friends because they're all in this kind of entangled friend group. And so when they go on vacation all together, they have to pretend to still be together. Feel like that was a really shitty synopsis, but you guys got the gist of it. The range of emotions that this book put me through, uncalled for, absolutely and devastatingly inhumane, a crime of the highest extent, and the best thing I ever experienced in the year 2022. Emily Henry will pay for this by my own money that I give her from buying her book and telling everybody else to buy it. So I don't really know how that's supposed to be a punishment for her, but we'll figure it out. I cannot wait for everybody to experience what I went through and still have trauma from. Again, I'm sorry for putting a book that isn't even out yet on my top reads of the year, but I couldn't lie to myself and I couldn't lie to you guys. I am but a harbinger of the truth. And you can't ask me to lie in front of you. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it, and I refused to do it, so I didn't. So you're just gonna have to pre-order it. Seems like the only solution for us all. So anyways, that's it for my best books of 2022. I'm sorry for my setup. I'm not super happy about it. It's definitely a downgrade from my past one, but I did get a new place and I'm gonna have to figure out where I want to do some filming. I don't know how many videos I will be posting. I don't know how frequently I will be posting. Don't hold me to any standards, okay? Taking this slow. Be grateful for what you get. Don't get greedy. That's pretty much it for me. Let me know what your best books of 2022 were. Let's have a little chit chat in the comments. Love you guys. Happy to be back preemptively.